Hi, you guys. Welcome to my podcast. This is episode 1. My name is Tess Timmons. In this episode, I want to let you know what this podcast will be about and a bit of my background. Why am I making one? So first, this podcast is, I'm going to have 2 different channels on YouTube. One is going to flow more with like my teaching, lesson plans and techniques. And then my other channel is going to be more so interviews that I do, and then solo podcast where you're just talking to me. Sometimes there'll be a crossover a little bit. If I'm interviewing someone and it has to do with like policy, then it might also flow into the education and also into the other. So there'll be a little bit of crossover. Some of my first podcast interviews are going to be with people who like have their own companies or getting to know them as a person. So one of my goals always is like helping people to achieve their dreams and access their dreams. So a lot of the podcasts will talk about people who have started a company or have started growing in a certain direction or way, and why they started doing that, what in their background made them want to do that, or what in their interpersonal drove them to do that. Not that the audience is trying to become them, but I'm hoping that it sparks genuine interest for yourself in asking yourself questions and then helping yourself spark out into your creativity, your drive, and helping your own dreams come true. And if you already have your dreams coming true, that's awesome. Then you're going to be meeting other people who are living their dreams out loud as well. And it should be like a feel-good, inspirational time, right? So some of them are going to be groups that are like nonprofit groups. Some will be groups that are travel companies. I'll also be interviewing out-of-the-box athletes, people that I know pretty much to start out with, that I think, deserve a stage and we can learn something beautiful from them, okay? So for my background, who am I? Why am I starting a podcast? There's always room at the table for more, right? It's currently 2024. I have a bit of a cold, but I'm going forth anyway, right? We're gonna do this. So I am currently like a middle school teacher. I've been doing that for the past 2 years. Previously to that, I was teaching high school for 10 years. And then before that, I was also teaching middle school and high school. So I've been teaching for about 12 years. Within that time period, I think since 2020, my students have been making podcasts. So I was helping them get equipment such as getting mics and all that good stuff. And they were teaching me a lot about podcasting, what equipment, what technology. And I also had taken a course from a company, Wit and Wire. Shout out to Wit and Wire. They are gorgeous. So that helped me to develop like what my podcast would be. But instead of starting my own podcast, I actually taught podcasts to students first. And now it seems like a good time to start my own. Also, in my family, I have a lot of people who have podcasts already. My cousin Alicia has a podcast. She interviews sport athletes. My cousin Alex has a podcast. He is a realtor, and it expands into other topics as well. And my brother had a very successful podcast way back at the start. It was like early 2000s. And it was back in the day when people were like, who's a podcaster? Is this some weirdo who lives in their parents' basement? Some of them were. But Nate, my brother, was working with the Denver Stiffs. And so he has his own very successful podcast that he ended up working with the Denver Nuggets and branching out as one of the first podcasters who was in the media box. He had gone to school for journalism. So it's really beautiful to see like where podcasts have sparked off to and all the different variety, right? So a bit of my background, like who I am, and this will be more like resume, not personal background yet, but as far as like who I am and what my drive is and what my experiences have been, I guess I'll start off with with when I was born. What? How long is this podcast? My father his family is from Canada, and so they moved to America. My mom was born and raised in Colorado. So on one side of my family, I'm first generation American, and I walk two worlds, right? Walk in two different countries or continents. Countries. And so that also helps me in relating to a lot of different people, right? Who are first generation or to that nature. And then when we look at my family on both sides, my mother and my father's side, my aunts and uncles, my parents, my siblings, majority of my cousins own and operate their own companies, from heating and air conditioning to a limousine company, which is what my parents started when I was young, to one of my uncles shoes horses. My aunt owns her own interior design company. One of my uncles owns an accounting company for small businesses. So I was always surrounded by entrepreneurs making things happen for themselves and putting themselves in the driver's seat. My sister owns her own company, a commercial sustainability company. So I think pretty much I got a business degree at the kitchen table, which a lot of you might have experienced as well. Next, I guess I would say starting at age 12, I was very driven. So I started babysitting and marketing myself. My sister at age 16 walked into a movie theater that wasn't hiring and convinced them to hire her, right? I at age 12 started babysitting for a family, and when they would come home, their kids were already asleep at 8:30. I was kicking that soccer ball, wearing them out. And then all the dishes were cleaned in the sink. And they're like, what? You wash the dishes? So I started getting word of mouth and a lot of customers. I ended up having a calendar at age 12, notifying myself of which family was coming to pick me up when. And it kind of took off from there. I was really loving the fact that I was making my own money, and it gave me a sense of freedom, right? I didn't have to work, but it gave me a lot of choices. So by the time I was 16, I was a waitress at a restaurant. At 18, I was a bartender. I don't even think that's legal anymore. and so on, right? So by the time I graduated at 18 years old, I was already paying for the gasoline in my car. I was paying for my clothes. Yes, my parents could buy me clothes from let's say Target, but I wanted to try J. Crew. And so I could afford that now on my own. And then I was also able to afford going to the movies with my friends, what have you. So it did create, again, like I said, that sense of freedom where I could tell my parents, hey, Friday night, I'm going out to the movies with my friends. So I'll talk to you later, right? It wasn't bossing my parents around, but I didn't really have to ask permission per se. Also, in that time period, there were no cell phones, so it was a lot of trust, right? Be home by midnight, and you just kind of figured it out. So after all of that, I went to college in Fort Lewis, and also to Australia in Darwin, and also finished up my BA in Denver at Metro and so forth. So I was studying anthropology, sociology, literature, creative writing, journalism, Southeast Asian studies, Aboriginal studies. Fort Lewis that I went to was an indigenous school at first, and then let the rest of us in. So that's always a big value for me. And then when I was up in Denver, I studied a lot of sociology and literature, and then also film. So film production, directing, producing, all of that kind of stuff. So I got credentials in that as well. After all of that, I was working in catering after I graduated, and party planning. So that was really fun. A great way to finish out after college, and paid off my student loans from a BA. That was responsible and good for me to do. And then I moved to working for a literary agent. So I would help read all of the books all of the queries that were coming in, and the 450-page novels. At that time, they were printed, and we had to go to the mail room, the post office, and get the bins delivered. And so I was able to sift through everything and decide what the agent should read. It was a beautiful job. I loved it. I mean, being a literature, studying literature in school for my BA, I was like, pinch me. I get to read books and talk to authors all the time. So within that, I learned a lot at the agency. I started like a newsletter for the clients so they would know who was getting published. We worked on international sales of books. Like Nicole Gnezda's book, Blue Jays in the Classroom. That was really beautiful to help her sell. We worked on marketing, and then I also started contacting the current authors that were our clients and asking them what books they were writing next. So I was starting to edit for them and just really, really enjoyed that a lot. After working there, I went back to school for my master's degree and wanted to try teaching, which is funny because my family has a lot of teachers, and I was always like, I'm not going to be a teacher. Even when I was in high school, I would leave 5th and 6th period and go over and help teach a 4th, 5th split class. And my cousin was working there at the time. So I helped her with that class. It was a year-round school. So when those students were off, then I would also help the special education classroom with their work as well. So I did that, I think, my junior and senior year. And everyone told me, like, you should be a teacher. And I was like, no, teachers are nerds. I don't want to do that job. I'm already doing it in high school. I'm out. So lo and behold, years later, life is funny, and I went to school for my master's degree for teaching. At that time, I did a couple different jobs. I worked at Kohl's and learned like the beauty department and the jewelry department. We remodeled a store, so at 10 o'clock at night I would show up and we'd work until 8 or even noon rebuilding the store. That was pretty fun. I worked for PGA Golf Tour. It's a clothing store. They were building one, so we actually hammer and nail helped build like the inside of the store. And then I was also in charge of the female apparel line, so I would dress all of the models and take all of the clothing in the back warehouse and organize it. I loved that. I got some really cool opportunities when I worked there. They had a local news station come in, and we did like a fashion show for the news station. So that kind of incorporated my film degree, right? And I was able to style the models and have them do like a runway walk for TV. And we also styled the TV host, so that was really fun. And then we also had a fashion show for like a nonprofit event. So I was able to style all the models for that show as well. And lo and behold, they never thought to carry the golf clubs. I was like, oh yeah, honey, we're carrying the golf clubs. So it was really fun to do. From there, I went and worked for a law firm, Holland and Hart, and their headquarters in Denver. And Hart is H-A-R-T, but it's really H-E-A-R-T. Oh my goodness, I love that law firm. They are just wonderful. I was working as like a clerk, so I knew like 7 different jobs of the law firm, and I was the one who would break them. So if like the ladies who were answering the phones or the people who were answering the phones needed a break for lunch or whatever, I would go and answer the phones for a while and break them. Or if someone was over in the copy room or the mail center, I would break them. Or someone who was up serving another job. So it was cool. I learned 7 different jobs, and then I was able to move throughout the entire law firm. On my lunch hour, I would go and interview different lawyers because I just found them to be fascinating. One of my favorite floors was the patent attorneys, which I don't think they do patent attorney law anymore. But I always thought, oh man, you're in the future, which reminded me of when I worked in publishing, because we'd know like books that were coming out in the next 3 to 5 years, right? Well, a patent attorney is also the same, knowing like what's headed out into the future. They kind of hold the secrets. So yeah, I found that I found that to be so cool. And then when I was working there, they knew that I was like finishing up my master's and trying to find a teaching job. Right when I finished my master's, it was the 2008 crash. So not a time to be hired at all. I think there were 800 applicants for the one. Well, I applied for so many teaching jobs, but one that I fully researched that I applied for, there were 800 people applying for that position. So lo and behold, a lot of first-year teachers were not getting hired. Luckily, though, my dear friend Ken contacted me and said, "Hey, you're single, you don't have any children or even plants, you should move." And I was like, "Why are you trying to get rid of me? I thought we were friends. What are you talking about?" And so he told me about an opportunity of a school that he knew of in Northern California, a charter school that was hiring. I had finished my student teaching at an all-girls Jesuit private school. You did not have to be religious to go to that school at all. Shout out Regis Jesuit. They had all types of students that went to school there, and it was a beautiful experience for my student teaching. I really enjoyed it. Danielle Dowley and Bethany were such beautiful guides for me through that process. And it also, within my student teaching experience, my former principal back in high school was my master's degree guide. He would come and watch me teach, so it was really quite funny. That, how life creates these circles, that when you're headed in one direction, sometimes I feel like, what am I doing with my life? But then when you look backwards, it all builds on each other, right? So yeah, it's kind of cool that way. So anyway, I did a Zoom interview for a charter school, and in California, they liked my Zoom interview. They asked me to fly out. They paid for my flight and 4 days of accommodations in Lake Tahoe so that I could see where I was moving to. I thought it was going to be the rolling hills of Napa. And when I got off the flight, they were very, pointed at showing me the snow poles. And I'm thinking, well, I'm leaving Colorado for Colorado? What's happening? There's still pine trees, there's snow. I'm not sure about this. But it ended up being a wonderful experience. So I've taught at a charter school there. I helped build the school. As a first-year teacher, I was in charge of all of the English scope and sequence, curriculum, what have you. I taught 7th through 10th grade English, and then also yearbook, speech and debate. I don't know when I slept, quite frankly, but it was a great experience. From there, I moved to a public high school, Truckee High School, and stayed there for 5 years. Had a beautiful experience there. They sent us on many professional developments, and just want to tip my hat to Logan Maloney for all of the amazing leadership that she gave me and opportunities that I was given there. And then from there, I switched over to North Tahoe, which is a Title I public school, and had a beautiful opportunity there and taught there for 3 years. Did experience COVID there. It was dialed because we have so many students that would go home to Mexico, and also our athletic program, students who were skiing in different countries. So we were already a one-to-one school. So when we shut down on March 19th, that next Monday, that was a Friday, that Monday we were up and running and teaching. So we never took a break. And that, is pretty amazing when you think about what was going on nationally with schools at that time. So yeah, had a really good experience there. And then I finally was like, I'm good on shoveling snow, and I'm not really skiing anymore. So what am I doing up here? So then I switched, and now I'm at a Title I school, and I'm living by the ocean. So I still reside in California. Like it or not, I love it. I love it here. So so having a good time with that. So that kind of gives you some background of who I am, and maybe who I am, and a little bit about what this podcast is going to be about. I'm very inquisitive. I love to learn. I've worked in a variety of industries, And I love to talk to people. Like on my lunch break at that law firm, I was already interviewing people, right? So it just seems like natural for me to interview people that I know and come across and talk to them about who they are, their internal drive, and what makes them spark. What are they happy about in life, and what are they giving back to this earth, right? So so I'm excited for all of the different interviews that you will be hearing on here. I plan to drop them weekly. I think it depends on who I'm interviewing and how I can line those up. But I'd rather give you quality than not. So, if it ends up being once a month, it's once a month. But thank you for stopping by. I hope you do subscribe. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.